Welcome to Off the Chair, the podcast where clinicians stop playing by the rules, push back on the system, and say what everyone else is thinking. I'm Dr. Colleen Long, psychologist, seven-figure group practice owner, and unapologetically calling BS on the burnout culture of this field. This isn't your typical self-care tips and gratitude journal kind of show. We're talking real talk, from the chaos of building a private practice to the mental load of being the strong one all the time. You'll hear behind-the-scenes truths about leadership, boundaries, messy growth, identity shifts, and what happens when therapists start dreaming beyond the chair. If you're over the toxic positivity, the culture building, the done pretending you love every client, and secretly wondering, is this all there is? You're our people. Let's burn the rule book, get loud, and get off the chair. In honor of Christmas and the whole December holiday season, I'm doing a special little series here on resetting the nervous system. Because tell me you haven't had this moment lately where you just want to crawl into your micro fleece pajamas, bed rot, make a hot chocolate, and basically time travel back to the days when Kevin McAllister being left home alone was the biggest crisis anyone had to worry about. Like, can we go back to that level of problem? And here's the thing, this isn't going to be an episode about building a perfect gratitude practice or starting a new morning routine or adding one more thing to your already heavy workload. It's definitely not going to be one of those, here's what you're not doing conversations. This is the opposite. This is a conversation about the science, about what our nervous system is actually trying to tell us under chronic stress, and why rest doesn't always work, and what actually helps your body complete that stress response. Because we might not be able to change the world or the time we're living in, but we can always change the view. So let's get into it. So one of the biggest reasons that this podcast even exists is because I hit my own version of a wall. Burnout, injury, my battery is dead, I have zero fucks to give, like whatever you want to call it, that's why we're here. I just knew I didn't have any more juice to keep going. I couldn't do it the same way. And I also knew the system is broken. Like, it's kind of broken, right? Not just the insurance companies and a lot of the things that we've talked about in terms of industry trends with clinicians and licensed professionals, but also with AI. You know, Bill Gates' most recent statement, which will probably become true, which is that many doctors and lawyers will be replaced by AI within a year. Scary stuff, but we're nimble, we're quick, we're flexible. And so that's why we're here with Off the Chair. And a lot of the purpose behind Off the Chair is about pivoting. It's about shifting gears. It's about getting creative. It's about answering that question, if not this, then what? And believe me, you'll hear plenty of episodes about how you reinvent yourself, your career, rethink your path, and build something that actually inspires you again. But for the month of December, we are doing something different. We are doing a holiday reset. And I almost feel like that's not a great term for it, because I feel like it intimates like you just need to do some yoga and then you'll be good. And that's not what I mean. I mean a reset, like Control Alt Delete, yank the power cord out of the computer and like shut it down and wait for 60 seconds before powering back on. That kind of reset. That's what I'm talking about. So I really, really hope that somebody doesn't just like turn this part off in the car line, and then after their kids are out of the car screaming, they turn it back on, and you just hear me basically saying like, so for January, we're going to crush our goals. Like, that's not the idea here. We're not going to just do like a 2-part, like get you back on track so you can keep on doing the thing that got you here in the first place. This is about changing our relationship to stress and understanding the inevitability of stress. And it's also about just setting ourselves up for success in a different way. not about like new routines and like do some meal prep. It's not about any of that. So I just want everybody to be really clear what I'm saying. I recognize that if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, man, I just don't know how I'm going to keep on going. The last thing you want to hear is about what else you have to keep doing or something new that you have to do on top of what you're already doing. So, this is really about the science of burnout, chronic stress, whatever you want to call it, and the science behind what presses that reset button, and also just giving yourself some grace. So, the reason why it's a holiday reset series, number one, you just have to have catchy captions, right? But the other thing is like, just feel, even in Southern California, where it's about 85 degrees outside right now, I still want to hibernate and wear my cozies and just do all the fun things for Christmas and none of the things that I have to do, all the things I want to do. And that's rare for a type A personality. So if you are in that same vibe, I hope you're listening today. Last thing is that my hope going into this is that when you're done listening, you don't just feel like, okay, like I have some tools and I like know what I need to do, but you feel clearer. You feel less guilty about the stress you've experienced. And you're not like, oh no, what have I done to my system? And my gosh, I've gone off track and everybody else was on this track. My goal is for you to feel brought back into humanity, as Carl Rogers would put it, where you feel like, okay, this is like a thing. This is the zeitgeist of the times, and it's not just me. I just have to learn how to shift to deal with what is going on right now. And also just understanding the science behind why we do what we do. Okay, so when a clinician is listening to what we're talking about, most of the time, because they're clinicians, they know all the things that I'm not going to say anything new in terms of you have to give yourself a break and you have to like get some fresh air and get some sunshine and that sort of thing. And so I'm not going to waste anyone's time talking about psychology 101. You've taken the time off, you've taken vacations, the PTO, you've cut the sessions down, you've tried to be better about boundaries, but you're not feeling relief. You're not feeling any different. And you just feel this sort of low grade agitation. For me, it came out in just like someone would want to meet with me and I would be like, what? What do you want? Because there was this never ending vortex of need, whether it be from my children, my husband, my patients, my employees. It just always felt never ending. And I wasn't like that when I first started off practice, and none of us were. And so when we get to that agitated sense of like, what now? Or feeling like we're just going through the motions of life, that's when we know that we've hit something beyond just, I've had a hard week and I need to take a vacation. This is something that is chronic stress. So today is not for people that I need to convince need a reset. You already know if you need a reset or not. And chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're one of those people. So today is about how nervous systems actually reset, not in theory, not in a perfect world, but in real life, inside real constraints that we face now. And so the place I want to start is a distinction in the way that I viewed stress entirely. So one of the most useful frameworks I've come across in terms of burnout and stress is the Nagoski sisters' work in Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. That's the name of the book. The Nagoski sisters, Emily and Amelia, wrote this book, and Emily wrote the book Come As You Are, which was a really, really popular book about women's sexuality. And now the sisters have come together to write this book about the burnout cycle. So they say stress isn't the problem, but being stuck in the stress is the problem. And that is such an important distinction to make that I want to say it again. stress is not the problem. It's being stuck in the stress that is the problem. And so what I mean by that is many of us are now sort of socialized to feel that wellness and the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow or the destination is a complete lack of stress. That there's somebody out there, like a mom, she's got 3 kids and a full practice, and she's just like, I don't know how to keep on counting all this money. I just like keep running it, keep counting it. I'm getting skinnier and skinnier. And like my kids just like love me more and more every day. And just everybody's like, Colleen, you do such a good job. There's nobody out there that is living that life. And if they are, if they say that they are, they're lying. So I want to talk about this idea that we're supposed to be stress-free. And this is not a new concept. If you go back to if you go back to ancient Eastern philosophies, the whole idea is to be human is to suffer. That was the whole concept in Siddhartha, was this idea that to live is to suffer. And so somewhere along the way, the wires got crossed, especially in America, where we thought we're entitled to unending happiness and these peaks of joy, free from the constraints of, you missed your tax filing, you owe this penalty, this person that you loved so much died. Life is not a given every morning. Each day is not a promise and a guarantee, and somebody's going to disappoint you, and someone's going to lie to you, and someone's going to betray you. To be human is to suffer. So the quicker you get used to that, the quicker you become, I think, graceful with yourself and your own relationship to stress, suffering in general, pain and suffering. Our bodies are designed to handle stress. In fact, we need to have a little stress for our bodies to feel alive and to feel like, oh, hey, we're still going. Okay, cool. Right? Not time to shut it all down. Good. We're still going. And one of the reasons why we get rewarded pretty heavily, neurochemically speaking, when it comes to exercise. You go out there and run, not only are you preventing yourself from getting all sorts of things in terms of plaque buildup and stress and your better memory and longevity and cognition, but you're also de-stressing yourself and setting yourself up to feel really good at the end of the day, because guess what? That tells your body you're still alive. It's still kicking. Please keep all the systems go. We are good for a while. And so thinking about stress as a process and something that our bodies are designed to handle, just like digestion, just eating, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Those are things that we're not like, man, I need lunch again. No, that's part of life. That's what we're designed for. We need that. We need that food. We need to have the grit and the tension of digesting things that are difficult to digest so that our body builds up immunity to those things and knows what to do next time if we're exposed to that. So stress is not the problem. It is chronic stress, being stuck in stress that our bodies do not know how to handle. So we know if there is a lion chasing us to run, and our bodies, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, know exactly how to interplay with each other to be able to get us across that savanna to get away from that lion to safety. The problem is when our body experiences that chronic stress over time for too long, it's not designed to bring us back from that, or at least in a way that is healthy. And so that's the thing that I want to talk about today. Our body doesn't speak the same language as our mind. So if you have been worrying about your licensure exam and that's causing all of this stress, just because you've submitted your licensure exam and you feel good about it doesn't tell your body that you are not stressed anymore. There are certain things that you have to engage in to let your body know that that stress is no longer present and that you are safe. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Another example that I can give is when you are maybe in tax season and you're like, man, I got to get out of this state. You can tell I live in California. I got to get out of this state. Sunshine's not worth this price. Too much, too high. And you're stressed, stressed, stressed. You complete the taxes, you're done, you've paid them. You don't have to worry about it again until this time next year. Again, your body does not understand that you filed the tax return and that the stress is no longer present unless you engage in some of these activities that signals to the nervous system that the threat is no longer there. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think as clinicians, you always feel like, well, of course, like I just eliminate the stress and then then I'm not stressed out anymore. And that's not the case when it comes to physiology. So as clinicians, most of us are very good at changing our environment. We solve problems, we organize, we clean up the inbox, we reduce the workload, we ask for time off, we plan a date night. Those things matter, but they don't automatically tell the body it's safe. Safety isn't cognitive, it's sensory. That's why we call it feelings, right? So your nervous system doesn't calm down because you understand something differently. It calms down because it experiences something different. So one of the examples that they use is the analogy of a gazelle being chased across the plains by a lion. And we think of fight, flight, or freeze as our three primary responses to stress. And there seems to be a bit of a societal hierarchy between what we see from someone that fights versus someone that freezes. There's a bit of a, well, I just fight. When life gives me lemons, I give it lemonade versus the person that says, I just checked out. I just buried my head in the sand and I just have been in the same place for 2 years. There's more shame in the freezing than there is in the fight. And the example of the gazelle is a really powerful example of where freezing is actually where freezing would actually be the best option, because if that gazelle continues to try to flee as the lion's biting into its hip, the lion is going to continue to bite. But if the gazelle chooses to freeze and play dead, the lion lets go of its grip, goes back to its cubs to let them know that it's killed this and that they're able to feast on it for the day. And as the lion moves away, the gazelle is able to escape to freedom. So just a very primal example of where freezing is the preferred activity, the preferred response. As clinicians, we're especially good at interrupting the stress response. We're trained to stay regulated for our clients. We're trained to keep it together for our families. We're trained to generally be the anchor for everyone else. And it works until it doesn't. So emotions aren't ideas. They have this beginning, middle, and end. And we sort of interrupt the emotion, but it doesn't disappear. It just relocates. It shows up as chronic tension, digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome, headaches, migraines, pain, irritability, numbness. So you can see studies where people that have chronic stress for long periods of time have increased incidence of cancer in the arteries, increased hypertension. So there's a ton of research on the connection between long-term chronic stress and disease. And this is not yet another thing to add to, something for you to be stressed out about. It's just saying your body is asking you to finish something. This is where the conversation splits into two unhelpful camps usually. So traditional burnout culture will say, you're exhausted, rest more, you need to set better boundaries. And then hustle culture will say, you need to push through, build resilience, have better grit, right? So neither one addresses what is actually happening in the body. And the Nagoski framework says something different. Your nervous system is stuck in mid-response. And so what it needs isn't more effort or a nap or a manicure or a massage. It needs completion. That's a very different target. Quick pause. One of the most underrated nervous system tools is community, like actual safe community, not performative, not comparison-y, just a space where you don't have to translate your experience. So if you're listening and you're thinking, I've been carrying this alone and there's all of these other people out here that feel the same way, come join us in Off the Chair community on Facebook. It's where we keep the conversation going, and honestly, where a lot of people start to feel that first little notch of safety again, because you realize you're not the only one. And if you want behind the scenes clips and mini resets, follow us on Instagram at Off the Chair Podcast. All right, back to the episode. So, what does completion of the stress cycle actually look like? This is where people expect something entirely too difficult or complicated. And what surprised me about this framework is just really how basic it is. The nervous system completes stress through physical and relational signals, not insight, not higher cognition. There are 7 primary ones that they talk about, and you'll probably notice that they already do a lot of these. There's 7 primary ones, or 7 primary ones that they talk about, and you'll probably notice that you already do some of these instinctively. I know I certainly did when I think back on my own burnout experience. So the first is movement, and I think that's the one that we probably are most familiar with. It's not, like just exercise or punishment for your body, but it's movement that allows you to discharge activation. Walking counts, stretching counts, shaking your hands counts. So Peter Levine, he does a lot of the somatic work and thought leader in that space, and talks about an accident that he was in and just how getting back into his body really helped him. A lot of people that practice DBT understand that by coaching their clients to get back into their body and into sensations, and really truly asking, how does that make you feel versus how does that make you think, is helpful. And that's where that cliche comes from the cliche therapist. How does that make you feel? Because we want someone to be in their body, not in their head anymore. The head is what has gotten us here in the first place. The second is breath. So just longer exhales, extended exhales, one of the clearest signals you can give your body that the nervous system threat has passed. You're not forcing calm. You're just sort of letting the body downshift. And if you've ever done a true breathwork class, you can experience the genuine power that breath has to heal the body. It truly is medicine. And I have experienced that myself. And I don't think I ever will look at breath in the same way, in the same basic way that I once did after that class. The third is positive social connection. So this one matters more than we tend to admit. Eye contact, laughter, feeling seen, not venting endlessly, not problem solving, just safe connecting. This is why isolation, especially during the pandemic, made everything worse. So we live in a world where, honestly, I don't know that we ever really need connection anymore. We used to need connection in our tribal community to be able to get resources and food. And now you just have DoorDash and online study courses. So I don't know that we would ever do that again unless we understood the evolutionary imperative to do that. And so positive social connection is another really, really important piece there. The fourth is affection. So it's not just like a quick hug or like holding hands. It's a sustained hug, long enough for the body to soften. And I think back to the story of when I was a clinician, I was a couples therapist, which is really funny. I was a couples therapist for couples before I was married and before I had children, talking to couples who were married and had children. And man, there's so many conversations I would rehab now. Uh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I remember one of my favorite clients, I brought back a David Schnarch tool, which David Schnarch, he's no longer with us, but he was a thought leader in the field of differentiation-based couples therapy, and talked about hugging till relaxed. And because of my Southern roots and drawl that I'm always trying to escape, my client thought I was saying hugging toes. So every night, him and his wife would do hugging toes. And what I was trying to say was hugging till relaxed, which essentially is 15 to 20 minutes, which I know sounds like a long time, that you are hugging your partner. You're not like scrolling on your phone. You're not like side cuddling and like watching Netflix, but you're literally just in the moment hugging, allowing the mirror neurons to connect and do what they do. And in that moment, you are letting all of the stress melt away. You're building up these bonding chemicals and oxytocin and serotonin and all these good feeling connection. And Nagoski sisters use the example of if you're running from a hippo, the world's most dangerous predator, second to humans, and you escape and you find your friend's house and you run in your friend's house and you close the door and the hippo is like, oh, I'm going to have to give up and walks away. Immediately, you take a big breath, right? And you feel alive because you've just done this movement. And you look at your friend and you go, I'm safe. And you have connection, right? And so there are a lot of evolutionary imperatives that are the reason behind why those behaviors help make us feel new again and help us to actually press that reset button. And when I say all this, I think many of you probably know all of this. I mean, everybody is reasonably gone through grad school. So these are not, these are not new things I'm telling you. But if you think about how this plays out in your day, and I'll just talk about in mine, if I am burned out and I'm like, oh my God, if I have another fucking Zoom meeting today, I am going to quit. I'm going to quit everything. I'm going to quit being a mom. I'm going to quit being a psychologist. Can't do another Zoom meeting. And then a friend goes, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? I'm going to be like, no, I don't. I don't want to do that. Right? There's whole memes on JOMO, joy of missing out. And I just use that example because I think the things that we need to reset are not the things that we intuitively do when we're in the midst of chronic stress. And so, again, borrowing from DBT, it's opposite action for a lot of this. It's doing the opposite thing that we want to do, which sounds like another hard, but I think it's enough to get us to a place that feels held until we can hold ourselves. So the fifth element of this Nagoski framework is just a good old cry, a good old cry. So just a real cry, like full snot, not apologizing for it, like ugly tears, not like a soft, glistening John Cusack tearful cry, but like a, I don't want anyone to see me like this cry. That is part of what releases the stress response. The sixth is laughter. And if you think about these two things I'm talking about, crying and laughter, it doesn't matter what language you speak. If you see somebody upset, you instantly, those mirror neurons go in to connect and wonder what happened to them and are they okay? And should I do something? Same thing with laughter. If someone's laughing, you want to go, what are they laughing about? What's so funny? I want to be part of that, right? So crying and laughing are part of that thing that builds community, builds kinship, and is that universal language that connects us all, but also most importantly helps to press that reset button. And the seventh is creativity. So Carrie Fisher used this phrase, turn that broken heart into art. And I love that. Instinctively, when I was at my most burned out, I would go on walks and not for like a calorie burning aspect. I just literally would go for like slow walks, like 85-year-old grandma slow walks. And I would listen to podcasts and I would just wander in the house and putter around. And then I would sit at the piano and I would play Billie Eilish and I would just create. I would bullet journal. I would paint. None of it good. None of the outcome was anything that anyone would go, wow, you should have been an artist. No, it was not. But there was something instinctively in me that said, you gotta press shift, girl. You gotta do that. And so that's what's interesting to me about now reading this after this is that looking back on some of the stuff that my body, my DNA instinctively knew how to do in the midst of this. Okay, so the thing that just ties all of this together, and if you remember nothing else, is that completing the stress response cycle is so much more important than abolishing the stress altogether. That will never, ever happen. In your life, it will never, ever happen. There will always be a new stress, whether it's job or your marriage or your friends or your kids or your money. There's always going to be stress. But our response to it, how we reset, is different. And so I don't say that in a way of like, you just need a journal and like, just like, just like look at it as like life is short. What I'm saying is using those 7 factors these are the only things that reset the nervous system from a purely physiological level. So allowing yourself to cry, allowing yourself to laugh is medicine. This is where I want to widen the lens for a minute because we drop self-care so much in this field. Self-care, self-care, self-care. And it's like the fallout shelter, like you just drop into this little shelter and then like the whole world will implode and then you'll just be fine down there. And we survive in community. If we have all of the best intentions for ourselves, I'm going to get a good 8 hours of sleep every night, but no one in our family cares at all about that 8 hours of sleep. It's just an idea. It's not going to happen. And so there has to be a point in which our community, our family, whomever it is that's in our daily routine understands these are non-negotiables for me. And, all of us, I think, sleep is such an easy example to give because so many of us struggle with sleep. And you can have the best bedtime routine on the planet. I mean, you can just be using the nod pod and the vagal nerve stimulation and the melatonin and the 432 hertz music and doing all the stuff. But if your kids know that they can get up at 5 a.m. to get a little alone time with you, and that's okay because you welcome them in, it's never going to change. So that's why chronic stress can't be healed in isolation. And that becomes a systems issue. So what's the antidote to that? I mean, of course, yeah, I'm going to say you gotta have better boundaries, right? But we also want to have systems. We want to have structure. We want to have predictability and we want a shared workload. So these are 3 things that are really, really important to look at if you're struggling with putting those boundaries into place. And so the last thing I want to do is beat someone over the head who already feels beaten down that they should be doing better boundaries, but shifting life to where the system respects this new way of living for you. As a mom, I always think of like, well, but the system's broken and I can't, there's too much. Everybody wants everything and there's only this much time in the day. And that Maria Shriver quote, you can have everything, but you can't have it all at once, I love because it truly helps me remind myself that this is a season and these are the things, these are the pain points. And then next season, it's going to be these pain points. And so I just have to understand that I've got to figure out what system works for me. And then this is going to be a new system that works for me. And it's always going to be an adjustment. And it doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. It just means that I'm human. So what does that look like, right? What structures make rest default? Consistent lights dim in the house, fewer late night decisions, repeating routines that don't require thinking over and over. So that is what I'm talking about, is just making it easier on yourself. Predictability also removes a lot of the noise. So last person again that's going to say, you should meal prep. I don't meal prep, but removing a lot of the decisions that you have to make throughout the week. So you eat the same breakfast every day. I mean, I wear the same shirt every day. Like I'm going to make a lot of things easier on myself and remove that noise. Waking at the same time most days, having a few just non-negotiable pauses that go on. Like your alarm goes on and you're like, that's it, I'm up. Don't care if there's a fire, I'm going outside. So it's not like a productivity hack, it's more like an anchor. And then this is the hardest one, shared load. So it matters more than these personal coping skills. If you are the only one holding this plan in your head, your nervous system will never fully rest. What does that look like? Sure, you can say, can you like do some lunches or whatever? You can certainly ask for it, but I'm sure everybody has asked for more support. But you can also just let something be done differently. And it's probably not as good as what you would do, but it's just not by you. So just like allowing things to be okay. Like, "Ooh, I wouldn't have done it that way," but somebody else is handling it. And the more of those things that you can automate, eliminate, and delegate, the better. Okay. So this is where something interesting starts to happen as the nervous system begins to actually complete stress cycles for the first time, even in small ways. Your tolerance changes. You stop normalizing what hurts. You stop overriding these signals. You start listening to your body again. You start craving simplicity instead of stimulation. I remember that once I actually let my body complete this burnout cycle, I was like, I don't need to do all the things on this list. Like the world is not going to tilt off its axis if I don't do all these things. And I'm going to just eat a crumble cookie. I'm just going to eat a crumble cookie and like watch Stranger Things. So simplicity sometimes helps with all of this. The Nagoski sisters famously say burnout is basically fatigue that comes from caring too much for too long. And when you look at who's been socialized to care, who's expected to hold the emotional labor, remember everything, cultivate and maintain kinship, anticipate everyone's needs, it's not evenly distributed, and it's women predominantly. So we're in this weird, impossible time that we've set up, which is basically the message of congratulations, you're equal now. You can do it all. You can earn the bacon and bake the bread. Yay! So we're carrying all the old expectations on us and now the new ones. And also add to that we live in an incredibly child-centric zeitgeist right now where we are just doing, as a Gen Xer, zillennial, whatever you call it, born in the 80s, we're doing this little course correction from what we didn't get from our parents. So we're giving it to our kids and we're reparenting ourselves. And so like, well, I would like turn off 20 minutes because like they're here. So like, do you want to watch Jimmy Neutron? So every bit of your downtime is lived now for this thing instead of this thing. It's super fun. Okay. So we're carrying all these old expectations and the new ones. And this is why I think, and this is why burnout advice these days feels almost offensive. I think it implies this sense of, well, you just need to meal prep, or you just need to like organize your week better, or you just need a better morning routine. You just need more boundaries. And I love a good calendar. I love a good boundary. I love nothing more than a fresh legal pad. For a lot of us, clinicians, entrepreneurs, CEOs, doctors, lawyers, parents, this isn't a time management issue. This is the kind of tired a nap won't fix. It shows up as emotional exhaustion, sure, but also this increased sense of futility. Like you're just pouring water into this bucket with a hole in it. And you fall back into old patterns, not because you don't know better, but because your nervous system is maxed out. You don't have time or the energy to be creative. So the intervention is that we have to stop treating a very physiological and cultural problem like it's an individual try harder project. And one of the best things that hit me to my core when listening to this book by the Nagoski sisters was that there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The pot of gold is the rainbow, the whole rainbow. The joy, the anger, the grief, the relief, the fear, the love, the anger, the sadness. that full emotional range that we are designed to express. Burnout thrives when only certain emotions are allowed. Repair happens when all of them are permitted to move. So, what's the next step? Okay, we got an idea. We got to complete the stress cycle. It's not reinvention, it's repetition. It's these small, boring, compassionate signals of safety. You cry, you laugh, you hug until your body trusts them. And that's how resets actually happen. Quick break. If this is resonating, I want to invite you into something simple but surprisingly powerful. So stay close. Tune in weekly, follow the show, and let this be part of your nervous system reset, because hearing other clinicians talk about their real strife, their moral injury, their burnout, their I thought it was just me moments, that's co-regulation. That's your body getting the message, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. I'm safe. There are other people surviving this too. And if you want to be a guest and share your off the chair story, DM me on Instagram at Off the Chair Podcast. We're building a library of honest stories that help people feel safe enough to come back online. All right. I said this isn't about building better routines, and I stand by that. But I've learned something, that when you've been living in chronic stress, freedom isn't always less structure. Like, think about if you've ever gone on a vacation, you're just like laying on a beach for a couple days. You're just like, this isn't it, right? Sometimes freedom is a gentle structure that holds you until you can hold yourself again. So I want to name this too, because some people listening are likely in freeze right now. Maybe you've been in fight for a long time. Maybe you're a freezer, not a fighter. Maybe you're in flight, not lazy, not unmotivated, not behind. You're just shut down. You feel numb, stuck, spinning. If you're ever listening to your clients, looking at the clock, thinking 11 more minutes, 8 more minutes, you're there. And no vacation is going to save you. So listen up. When you are in that freeze state, it is next to impossible to be innovative, creative, inspired, because you're not operating from the part of the brain with creative vision or problem solving. You're operating from the alarm system. You're living inside of the amygdala. So if you're thinking, well, why can't I come up with my next move? Why can't I be inspired? Why do I feel like my brain is offline? Again, it's physiology. So I'm very aware that I am about to brain dump on you. And before anyone's nervous system goes, great, now I'm behind on nervous system regulation too. Let me say this clearly. You don't have to remember all this. You don't even need to do any one of these. You are not meant to implement these like a checklist. I'm going to organize these ideas into buckets so they actually make sense. And if something sparks a little, oh yeah, that feels doable, that's your cue. That's it. The idea is it's December, it's the holidays. Maybe you have a little bit more time off. I mean, in the mental health field, let's be real, it's usually the most busiest season for us. But let's just pretend for a moment that we're like everyone else and we get raises regularly by the insurance companies, and we also get lots of time off during the holidays. So if you're like, I need to do something, but I don't have the creativity to do it, here's your next chapter. Otherwise, just fast forward to the next episode. So the first bucket are the signals of safety and grounding. These are the things that tell your system, I'm okay right now. And for some people, this is where you're at. This is what you need. You just need this. Just need this one tangible thing to do. Okay. I am going to try not to throw up in my mouth as I say this phrase, and I want you to not throw up in your mouth too. So I have a gratitude corner in my closet. This gratitude corner does not need to be Pinterestable. It does not need to be lit in sunlight. It just needs to be the tiniest little shrine in your house or office that sparks joy for you, to borrow from Mary Kondo. So this little small space for me has a little sign that I got from my daughter a couple Mother's Days ago, years ago, about the bond between mothers and daughters. I'm sure she just like put that in Amazon and got it, but I love it. A picture of my dog Buddha, my Labrador retriever who I lost after 15 years this summer. My bullet journal and all the washi tapes I could find and all the like nice little felt tip pins and little yoga mat, a little essential oil, Palo Santo, and my Keurig coffee maker. That's it. When I do have one of those like little laser light things that looks like I am in a college dormitory, but it works for me. And that's a little space that I start the day off with. I go in that little area, I say my prayers in the morning, and I just say, like, okay, like, God, you're in charge today, not me. Just show me what I'm supposed to do today. And that's a nice little daily reset for me. And this little gratitude corner is where I can sit. And some days I do have to look at my journal and be like, what am I grateful for again? Okay. Because I'm not in that place. My brain, like most humans, wakes up in a state of, what do I not have? What do I need? What do I need more of? Instead of, I'm pouring from a full cup. So that is one little thing that I do that really helps this ritual. It's just about sort of like reminding the nervous system in a ritualistic fashion. And then it's like really the lowest hanging fruit for me because it's all there. It doesn't need to be set up. The other things in this bucket that you could do, like you don't need to do like a gratitude corner. If you don't want to do that, that's great. Walking outside, just sunlight first thing in the day. There's 11 billion Huberman podcast about how he goes outside and resets his nervous system with the sun. Him and Rocky. So if Huberman says it, it's Bible. Getting off or just way decreased on social media, music, sound healing. I mean, my God, who doesn't love a sound bath? And then smell. That olfactory input is the only thing that's directly connected to our hippocampus in terms of memory. So you wonder why you have an old, Tiffany Electric Youth, or was that Debbie Gibson? And all of a sudden, immediately, 14-year-old Shelley comes back to you, right? Not a mistake. So if you immediately want to put yourself in a different frame of mind, smell is the quickest way to get there. Second bucket is discharging stress from the body through movement, walking, yoga, breath work, acupuncture, the hugging till relaxed or hugging toes, whatever you want to call it, vagal nerve stimulation devices. I will say I'm a big fan of these. I'm going to just do another episode entirely on vagal nerve stimulation, polyvagal theory, and heart rate variability because it's so important. And there's so many studies out there that show the connection between depression, anxiety, and low heart rate variability. That if this sounds like a foreign language, just hang tight because I'll make an episode for it. But Pulsetto, Truvaga, Gamma Core. These are some of the names of the vagal nerve stimulation devices out there. They're not cheap, but once you buy them, you don't need to buy another one. Sound healing, again. Third bucket, medical and biological support. So I want to just kind of name these explicitly because there's so much unnecessary shame here. Fish oil, a million, bazillion, gajillion results on how fish oil makes our neurochemicals and our brain cells more slippery and they communicate better with each other. It's science. Gut health support. A lot of the studies are showing SSRIs aren't necessarily linked with depression, but the gut is. And so it's not just what is in the mind that affects how we feel, but lo and behold, it's what's also in the gut. So probiotics, working with a nutritionist, whatever floats your boat. And then ketamine IV infusions and Spravato treatments. I actually have done both ketamine IV infusions as well as the Spravato treatments and can't say enough good things about both of them. And I will probably do several episodes on both of these and just my experience and also the research on why these things, if cognitive behavioral therapy is the window into changing how you think and feel, ketamine and Spravato treatments are like the core of the earth, changing how you feel. The fourth bucket is just reducing ongoing threats. So eliminating toxic people, toxic thinking, toxic substances. If you're someone that's like, I got to go get a smoke or I got to go like drink every time I'm stressed. Sure, it'll make you feel good for that little period of time, but then it's further carving out a hole that you have to come back from. So just reducing any ongoing threats, reducing overhead, spending, emotional overhead, just noise in general. One of the things that instinctively happened for me is I started to forward all my calls to Google Voice. I turned off all my notifications. I mean, to this point, my husband's still upset. He's like, "Why you never get my notifications?" I don't know if it will ever come back. Like, it's too good, the silence right now. So the dings are off for right now, and delegating, automating, and eliminating wherever possible. It's not avoidance, it's threat reduction. So the fifth bucket is structure and predictability, not rigid routines, just gentle scaffolding. So non-negotiable breaks throughout the day, simple daily rhythms, bullet journaling, a December bucket list that's realistic. Like I want to go ice skating, or I want to knit a scarf, just something that's like, or even my kids and I, we made a Christmas movie bucket list one year, and we were like, we're going to watch all of these. And by golly, we did. Reading 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman, probably the best book ever written, ever. And it will entirely just change your whole perspective. Sixth bucket, connection and meaning. So finding your tribe, community, serving others in a way that doesn't deplete you. One of the things that I constantly have to shift back into is, how is what I'm doing today actually making the world a better place versus taking? And an example of that could be that I'm like, oh, shoot, my husband lost his job. I've got to figure out this podcast thing because I got to get more viewers and more listeners, and then I'm going to get ads and sponsorships, and this is how I'm going to make money. So now I'm coming at it from a scarcity mindset, and I need to take. Versus, I bet as alone and scared as you are feeling, there are probably 1,000 other people that felt worse than you did and didn't have the resources to come back from it. So why don't you just do this show for them? Changes the whole thing. Content's way better, response is way better, reception's way better. So constantly shifting into, how do I serve others versus how do I get my needs met? And that is not a instinctual response for humans. Therapy. I know I'm stating the obvious, but prolonged exposure to talking through the trauma of burnout is highly effective in desensitizing ourselves to that. Spirituality, however that shows up for you. And where I've seen it really work for people is people that go outside for escape, whether it be substances, sex, gambling, people, relationships, whatever, spending. When you cultivate a spiritual mindset, you learn to go within. And all of a sudden that stuff doesn't have a hole to fill because you have it internally. And then a purpose, like maybe it's not like what my calling is, but it's what feels aligned for you right now. And then that seventh bucket is creativity and novelty. So when you're coming out of that freeze place, novelty can be very small. I mean, I want to say during that year of burnout, I rearranged my office no less than 12 times. Just would put the desk there and be like, okay, I think life will be better if I just sit there. And then I just look at that. That's what I did. I think probably because when I was younger, life felt out of control. It was like I couldn't really control a lot of it as a younger kid, but I could control my room. So I would change that all the time. And that's what I still do in my office. Decluttering a little every day. So I try to just get one giant construction bag every week full of stuff that we throw out. Getting a new perfume, creative projects without an outcome, comparing down instead of comparing up. So comparison is the thief of all joy. If you find yourself constantly comparing yourself to somebody else, you can compare your insides to someone's outsides, So if you're going to compare, which there is an evolutionary propensity to doing that, look down. There's always somebody that's got it harder than you, struggling more than you. And, lastly for me, I just want to give props to Mike here, my husband, because he's basically a walking nervous system intervention. I don't think he even knows it, but listen, he missed his calling as a comedian. We laugh pretty much every day, and it's like uncontrollable belly laughs, and that's the thing that I was like, I could be alone on an island with this person and nothing else around and have a great time. And that lands in that stress cycle completion bucket for me. That laughter is a discharge for me that I needs and it moves that energy through. So, the other thing is like we've come up with certain hacks. Like I will just always do the laundry. It's just never going to happen that he's going to be like, "All right, everybody, let's get this organized." But the exchange is I get a foot massage 2 to 3 times a week in exchange for that. And that I realized also fills these buckets of like connection and touch and relaxation at the end of the day, ritual, predictability, systems. So there's certainly got to be a sense of like safety too at the end of the day. And I think if I could also say just one last thing, resentment. Like, we hold so much resentment in our life of maybe the way things should have been or the way things should be, or they shouldn't be like that, or he shouldn't think like that, or our president shouldn't be this, or, we've got so many shoulds. We should on ourselves, we should on everybody else. And instead, just saying, it is what it is. We're watching the show right now called Pluribus, and Carol is so angry. And it is igniting everything in me right now because she is resistant to everything that is. Like, it's the end of the world, Carol. Get on board. Be like that other guy who he had the choice of all the planes and he said, I want Air Force One and I'm going to Vegas and I'm going to travel with 7 supermodels. Like, yes, it's sad. The world as we know it is gone. And he has figured out how to quickly and nimbly adapt. And Carol is so angry. So resentments, man, they will kill you faster than anything. And so just letting go of that. And what do they say about anger? It's like drinking poison and expecting everybody else to die. It's just not, that's not effective. So I am going to wrap up for the day. We will be doing a second part here. And in the second part, we're going to just sort of talk about how like safety returns and rebuilding from a new foundation. But for today, before you go, if this episode made you feel even a tiny bit more hopeful, grounded, alive, inspired, just do 3 quick things. First, if you can follow podcast and come back weekly, not as another task, but think of it as a small, consistent safety cue, a reminder that you're part of something and you don't have to carry this alone. Second, if you want that sense of community, join us on the Off the Chair Facebook group. That space is for clinicians who are trying to reset, repair, and rebuild without pretending. And third, follow us on Instagram at Off the Chair Podcast for behind the scenes and many tools you can use in real time. And if you have an off the chair story, your breakdown, your reset, your pivot, your comeback, DM me because your story might be the thing that helps someone else feel safe again. All right, I'll see you next week.